We are back for episode 2 of this wonderful WoW token challenge. Today, we're going to be starting up the process of actually getting to level 30. And not only getting to level 30, but while we work on getting up to level 30, and we want that because then we can get access to flying in this zone, we also just want to level up so we can actually start outscaling the mobs around here in the zone so we can kill them even faster and start the farming operations there. Welcome back, everybody. This is a WoW token challenge. We cannot leave Durotar until we have earned a WoW token in value. The way that we're going to do it continuously from the last episode is that it will be the current value of the WoW token. So if the WoW token has changed in value by, 20, 30, 40k or whatever by the end of this challenge, then that is what we're going to go for. Whenever we hit the WoW token value in gold, whenever I log in, that is the value that we're going to use. But again, today's plan, we want to work on getting towards level 30. We don't have that many quests left available to us here in the zone. So a lot of the leveling that we're going to be doing is killing mobs over and over, and then also gathering and mining. Now, I will say most of the stuff that we're going to be collecting today from mining and herbalism, we're going to hold on to. Because as I talked about in the last episode, I want to do some shuffles with some of the other professions. And that includes engineering, that includes inscription, and blacksmithing. And we can easily swap between the professions because first of all, it's cheap. But second of all, because we can't leave Durotar, we don't actually need to worry about our skill levels in this. Because it doesn't really change anything if we delete mining and herbalism and then pick it up again later. And if we end up shuffling, we actually get the opportunity to make a little bit more gold out from our materials. And we're not going to turn... I don't want to say we're going to turn all of the materials that we collect into some shuffled, crafted materials or some items. But we will absolutely be doing it with some of it. Future Sen here that forgot to mention something. We, of course, have 2 months of game time being given away. This is open to absolutely everybody. What you have to do to enter is you simply have to like the video and then type a comment down below this particular video. A little bit about perhaps if you're doing this challenge yourself, talk to me about how far you've gotten or just in general what you're enjoying about World of Warcraft at the moment. I'd love to talk about it. You know, it also goes into any other gold making things. It's just a little yapping session, to keep it healthy around here. But I appreciate you guys, and every single episode, as I mentioned in the first episode as well, we will be giving away 2 months of game time. I hope this helps you guys out a lot, and let's get straight back to the video. We've gotten a couple of upgrades. We've actually gotten a little bit of a sword here that I've decided to swap over to survival. Because that does let us, kill these mobs a little bit faster, which is what we're actually going to need. And in the process of doing that, I also found out that we have no more quests. And we're almost level 24 here. And we do want to be able to get all the way to level 30. So we're going to have to kill a lot of mobs. I've done every single quest available to me, unless we venture into Orgrimmar. But as I said at the beginning of this challenge, we're only going to use Orgrimmar for auction house purposes and also, any vendors or anything like that. And that is it. We're not going to do anything else along those sorts. Now, another thing that I have decided, since we have to kill so many mobs, I'm going to try and go for the mobs that we can actually skin. And because of that, I decided to get rid of herbalism for the moment and pick up skinning. So the mobs that I'm going to try and kill a lot of are going to be mobs that we can skin, and then we'll get rewards from that. Right now, we're both getting, ruined leather scraps, but that's because the level is quite low. And then we are getting light leather, and we're getting light hide. Obviously, that depends on what kind of mob we're killing. We also do get access to boar ribs, which are decent, but as for the leather, that stuff is going to sell really, really, really quickly. So that is going to be awesome. We also get a couple of greens, a couple of grays from killing all of these mobs, which is going to be amazing. But that is the update currently. I'll get back to you guys once we get either to level 30 or closer to it, and I'll show you what we've picked up. I'm gonna try, if at all possible, to not post any of the stuff that we get from actually farming on the auction house, so you guys can see how long this takes. As an update, we are currently at 4 hours and 33 minutes. So by the time that we either hit level 30 or I see some kind of an update that I've deemed worthy to talk about, that will be the next update. So we'll see what the gold per hour and also just a level per hour-ish is going to look like, but that's currently the plan. After a bit of running around and many mob kills later, I've gotten to the conclusion that I think it'll actually be worth our time to do herbalism and mining, even though we can only run around on a riding mount. Because something about skinning is that we don't actually get any experience for skinning mobs that we kill. Obviously, the killing of the mobs will give us experience, if we don't count, or if we were to compare it to the experience that you get from herbalism and mining. But here's the thing, though. I've looked a little bit at the value of the leathers that we can get, and mostly what we're getting is light leather. And this has somewhere between a 1.5 to 2, little over 2 gold value generally. This will definitely sell, and we could also flip this into, or shuffle it into something with leatherworking. But I think if we actually want to get a little bit more out of our time, because we can still kill a lot of mobs along the way when we're collecting herbs and ore, I think the better option will be herbalism instead of skinning. Now, it doesn't mean we will never be using skinning ever again. You can see we actually got to 122, so I gave it a good try. But for now, we're going to go back to herbalism, and then we'll be on our way. If I actually do this at a reasonable pace, and I don't get distracted too much, can actually see here, we're level 24, and this is with no quest. We're almost at 25. This has taken me about 30 minutes, and that was with skinning and killing a bunch of mobs. So with herbalism and mining, I assume that it's going to be kind of similar. I think we can actually, if we really try, we can actually get more experience out of killing mobs. But if we make ourselves a good route through Durotar, and that's another reason why I wanted to do this. I actually want to figure out what will be the best route that we can do for mining and herbalism, because whenever we do get our flying mount, when we get to level 30, we will be doing that a ton. So figuring out what the best potential route is a great idea. Along the way, I think the route is going to include these rares, because the rares do have some greens and some grays and whatnot that can actually give us some more value. And that is, of course, that's what we need. And also killing the rares gives a fair bit of experience, so we want to be able to actually get that as well. So the route is probably going to be, we take a little bit of a rotation around all the rares, and then we basically just swing back and forth while we're collecting herbs. Whether or not we're going to do that when we start being able to fly is the big question. But it's a little too early to tell. I'll probably try both whenever we do get there. But for now, we have herbalism again alongside mining, and we are going to be continuing our adventures of filling up our bags. Now, one thing I did find, and I assume that there is one for herbalism as well. I didn't actually find it, but I found this mining sack on one of the vendors in Razor Hill. So I assume there is one for herbalism as well. And we can actually stick this in, like, in an equipped slot. Ooh, we might have to delete some things. This is... wow, we're wasting gold. Oh no! We have to make sure that we can actually equip it and only have mining things. There we go. So now that means we have 20 slots for a mining bag, which is wonderful, right? That's absolutely what we want. So I'll be looking for an herbalism one as well when we pass by Razor Hill. If we can get one, that means we actually have to make a very small amount of trips, not only to Ogrimmar or to any vendors. So that's going to be very, very awesome. One downside is that we can actually only put mining related materials in here, and the same thing would go for a herbalism bag. So that's one downside, but having, you know, an 8-slot bag that we can swap in if we decide to do a bunch of mob kills instead, that'll be great, right? They only fill 2 slots, so it shouldn't be too bad. But that's where we're at right now, and we're gonna move along to try and get to level 30 here. So look at this, and you might be like, Dan, you're level 26 and you can fly. Yeah, so in the process of flying around and mining and herbing here, I was thinking, I was looking at some of the achievements because I wanted to show you guys like the achievements that we do, so you can see that we haven't moved like out of the zone or done dungeons and things like that. And I see this achievement, and it says, learn the expert riding skill, and I'm like, wait, isn't that flying? So yeah, we already have flying. We already have flying, and I didn't realize that because I thought it was going to be master riding. But here's the thing. Expert riding is flying mounts, and I can't believe I haven't realized this after multiple hours of running around. But the flight speed that we currently have is 220%. So the master riding is the really fast flying, right? So right now we can actually already start flying around and collecting all of the herbs and ores that we would want. So I'm just going to go ahead and write this off as I had no idea, and yeah, I'll never talk about it ever again. So we're back in Orgrimmar, and there's 2 things that I want to check out. Number 1, I want to look a little bit at our mailbox, but not loot everything yet, because, you know, we're not done with this particular episode. But I also want to clean out our inventory and post the stuff that we have so far. Because now that I've, you know, gotten past the whole me not knowing that you could fly at level 20, we're going to go ahead and clean out our inventory of what it has currently, just because, you know, we want to be able to post up what we have. Now, I did take out some of the things that had expired, and you can also see that we have 408 gold, which is wonderful. And to not make that run in over what we have currently, we're going to go ahead and loot this. So that's actually going to bring us up to 1,271 gold, which is still very, 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 very far away from our overall goal. But I'm going to go ahead and post every single one of the items that I have in my inventory currently up on the auction house. And then my plan is that I want to go into Durotar, and I want to plan out somewhat of a flying route. You can also kind of already see my plan is to fly like this way. So we pass the rare spawn areas, and then we fly down here, and then we do a loop back around. That's mostly what we're going to do. And I'm going to test this out and see how many materials that we can actually gather up within probably an hour. And then after that, we'll make a decision on how many hours we're going to spend farming before we drop both mining and herbalism to swap it into, say, inscription, blacksmithing, engineering, and things like that, so we can turn it into even more gold. But for now, we're going to post this up, and then I will venture out and farm as much as possible. And then when we have some shuffling opportunities or moving some gold around, I will be right back with that. Farming has commenced for about an hour, and we've done the rotation around these particular rares and collected as many herbs and ores as possible. As you can see, there's a couple of updates. We're actually halfway to level 32, so our speed at leveling is going wonderfully. We're actually almost at the point where we're going to start out leveling the mobs, which means we can start killing them a lot faster. And the same thing goes for these mobs over here, where there's a lot of the rares that spawn. And there is one very interesting particular thing that I want to talk about, besides the fact of, you know, we've collected all these ores and all these herbs. I found this. A traveler's backpack. This dropped off of these Razormane mobs, where under here the Razormane grounds. This dropped off of one of those mobs. I don't think it actually dropped off of one of the rares. It could have, because I also did kill one of the rares while we were doing this. But on the loot table with my add-on here, I can't actually see that particular bag a part of the loot table. So I'm pretty sure it just dropped off of one of the regular mobs. But regardless, it doesn't matter. We got ourselves a 16 slot bag here. Now here's the thing, right? We're looking at the value of this bag, and I'm like, okay, well, is it worth it for me to equip this bag instead of potentially trying to sell it? And the way that I would look at it is we are probably most likely not going to be able to sell this bag for anything above maybe 50 or 100 gold, because there are bigger slot bags that exist that are being sold for absolutely nothing. So I think the best case scenario for us is to make our lives a little bit easier and just me equipping this bag, because that means less trips, and that also means more time actually being out here farming, which is wonderful. Now another thing is that I got a couple of green drops, and this is one of them. It has a pretty decent sell rate, so this is going to be easier to sell. Well, easier to sell than normal other transmog items. However, the current sword that we have, as you can see here, is a eye level 84. Now, they both have strength, which is unfortunate, but for us, it's a big upgrade of 3 damage per second. So this is going to make us be able to kill everything really fast. Here's the thing though, we are currently halfway to level 32. By the time we hit level 34 or 35, that's when we really only get experience from collecting ores and herbs anymore. And the mobs stop really scaling with us, which means that if we have an eye level 84 sword or a 130, it's not going to be a big difference. The mobs are still going to die relatively quickly, but it's still going to be a good amount of time before we actually get there. And if I end up using some party syncing stuff to make this a little bit more interesting along the way, I think that this is worth equipping. Because yeah, we could sell this for maybe 195 gold, or maybe somewhere between 100 or 200 gold, but I would much prefer it if we can actually speed up the killing of mobs that try to attack us when we're picking up herbs and ore currently, at least for a couple of hours, right? I think that's worth more than maybe selling this for 100 or 200 gold. So we're equipping this, and that is going to be great. Now another thing that we got is this imbued primal belt. This is one of the, like, I don't know if I want to call it one of the better transmog pieces. It's a relatively low sell rate. However, the value on it is pretty good. You can see that the region sale average is only 350 gold, but the market value and the regional market values are quite high. So we could potentially try and sell this for a little bit more, but even just getting a couple hundred gold for an item is awesome. So we did get another green, which is quite wonderful, because the main objective of the last hour was actually just, you know, farming as much as possible. Now, let's go over what we actually farmed here. So we have some trash up here, but let me move that down, and let me move that down. That should be it. So we got this green, and obviously we got that one bag as well, which is wonderful, and the sword. So 2 greens and a 16 slot bag. It's going to be good in the future if we end up getting too many to equip though. Then we got 2 shadow gem, we got 7 tiger's eye, we got 5 malachite, some light feathers, which might be vendored depending on the price. This is our mining sack, so that doesn't matter. We got 72 silver leaf, 62 scorpit stingers. As you can tell, we killed a lot of scorpits. Then we also got 18 boar ribs, and then 3 chunks of boar meat, 1 clam meat, and then we got 311 copper ore, and then 283 rough stones, and 36 linen cloth. And then we actually also have 2 elemental water, 89 earth roots, and 128 peace bloom. So if you put all of this together, I would actually assume that we have around 3,000-ish in value if we don't count the greens. So if you just count the materials, we got about 3,000 in raw material value out of farming an hour. Now, if we were to look at the WoW token currently on EU, it's 361k. Now, if you look and say, okay, well, 361,000 divided by 3,000, well, that means we have to spend 120 hours of just farming materials. So we need to get lucky on transmog sales to speed that up quite a considerable amount, Or, as I talked about previously, we need to use some shuffling methods and some crafted material opportunities in some of the crafting professions. Now, when it comes to mining and herbalism, as I talked about, we can actually just drop the professions and then go straight over to the primary crafting professions in either Race or Hill or in Orgrimmar. But I don't actually want to do that until we have a considerable amount of stuff, so we can spread out our materials a little bit and then go back out farming while that stuff is selling. So my plan is to farm a couple of hours, and then we go back and do that whole shuffling process, and I'll talk a little bit about what my thinking is and what the different materials are going to be. We're obviously only going to be crafting the stuff that we can get access to from Durotar, so we'll see how far that brings us, but there are a couple of opportunities, so that should help us a little bit. Even if we can get the gold per hour up to like 4,000 or 5,000, that severely speeds up the process. After a couple of hours of farming here, I actually wanted to just walk over to one of the vendors to sell some of my stuff, to clean out my bags. And not only did I find a bigger bag that we can actually buy, so I bought 3 of these because we haven't found any more of the traveler's backpacks, but I also was thinking that we could buy some of the things that go straight off of the vendor here. Now I actually think that this is fine, considering that we can buy all of this off of the vendor. We do have access to something like Relics of the Past here and some of the future expansions. What do you call them? Like crafting reagents from vendors. But because we can't really get any of the other materials that are used in the crafting of this, I mean, I guess a little bit with the Relics of the Past, we're just not going to touch any of this stuff. I think Relics of the Past are a little bit outside what our scope will be for Durotar, but the items that are related to the particular, the particular expansion, in this case, Classic or Vanilla or whatever you want to call it, I think that those materials, because they are in Orgrimmar, I think that those are fair game. Now, right now, I'm not actually going to be using them for straight up crafting. I bought them because on the auction house, sometimes they have a better value. Now, we didn't use very much. I mean, they cost almost nothing. We used maybe like 30 gold or something. But I also bought one of each of these like profession tools. There's a copper rod, there's a blacksmith's hammer, there's a mining pick, and an herbalist spade. Something that I've noticed over the years of my gold making activities, people are lazy. And they will absolutely spend some gold to continue being able to be lazy. So I will be posting one of these, and then each time they sell, I will buy a new one and post it straight back in the auction house. We actually also bought a fishing pole, so now that is on there as well. And we have these, okay? So when you look at something like mild spices here, if they sell for 1 silver, and you can see that 200 of them will sell for 2 gold, we can buy this for almost nothing in terms of copper. So this is not a big deal. We actually don't want to do too much of this, but the sell rates on these are ridiculously high. So you see, for example, on the course thread here, the region average daily sold of this is 168,000. So what that means is the chances of us being able to sell this at 2 silver, for example, within 1 post is extremely high. So obviously there's going to be other people that post here. You can see there's 348 other sellers, but it is a very cheap thing. Like, we could post this 5-10 times before we even care too much about it. So I was just thinking this gives us a little bit extra gold to hold us over until, we really get things cooking. Some of these are a little bit better, like these crystal vials, for example, and then some salt. We have some red dye. And then we have some yellow dye here, which is also a little bit more expensive from the vendor. So that will cost us a little bit more. Profit margin is going to be a little smaller. That's okay. This is not really a big deal, but it's really easy for me to purchase these off the vendor. So we'll take the gold for now. But it's also good to know what we can actually buy from each vendor, so we can make some gold off of that. Now, we did actually farm a whole bunch of stuff here. You can see from my last update, the numbers have grown quite a bit. So that is absolutely amazing. And I will be doing a couple different things with these materials, and we'll go over that in a second. I did get a couple more greens, which is awesome. I posted some of it already. And we can actually take a look. This one is awesome. I don't know if it's actually going to sell for this much, but we're going to try and post it for the prices that are available. One other thing that I will probably be making very soon. Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, for now, we're going to keep that in the bags. One thing that I'll be making pretty soon, most likely, is a group on TSM, so we can start posting this stuff a little bit quicker. I don't really think it's too much of an issue because I don't post things that often. So it's really not that big of a deal, and we also get to check each individual thing and don't blindly skip over something if we didn't set the TSM group up properly. We will be posting our linen cloth. That's not a big deal. Our shadow gems are going. We're going to keep the tiger sign and malachite because I remember that there's some materials, or not materials, but crafted recipes in some of the professions like blacksmithing and engineering. There is some of that stuff that use these, so we're going to hold on to that for now. Now, for what we actually have posted on the auction house right now, we have approximately a 60k in terms of value, which is awesome. We have a couple of, pricier items. The primal boots here, they're probably not worth that much. Some individual might buy it for that much, but I think it's going to sell for a lot less. So even if we take that out, we still have somewhere in between, 40 to 50k, which is awesome. You can actually see some of the vendor materials already sold here, which is always great to see. So, but now we're going to go ahead and do some magic with these wonderful materials. We have finished crafting just about absolutely everything that we possibly could. There's some upsides and some downsides to all of it, and that's what I plan on going through right now. We started out with picking up blacksmithing, and in blacksmithing we crafted a couple of these simple transmog items that have a little bit more value than what they actually cost to craft. Now, the sell rates are not that crazy, but I was doing these just to see what else we could get throughout the profession. The only other thing that's realistically interesting is rough grinding stones, but besides that, there's nothing really interesting in blacksmithing because of the lack of materials. However, one of the things that we did need was tiger's eye and malachite. We also need linen cloth, but at that point I had already spent it, and we also need some light leather. If we end up getting access to all of those again and not just straight up selling them on the auction house, we can actually make about 10 additional transmog pieces that are worth a couple hundred gold. So I think I will be doing that once we have a bunch of that stuff again. Now, another thing that I did do is, as we walked around these different vendors, I picked up some of the things that they sold, right? Some of them sold some shirts, some of them sold some recipes, and since we can buy them straight off the vendor, I think they're fair game. There's also a couple other transmog pieces like these simple wildflowers and whatnot, so I decided to pick those up as well. Now, besides blacksmithing, we picked up engineering, and in engineering we did a handful of copper bolts. You get access to those pretty fast. It's around level 30 in classic engineering. Now, what you can do to get almost all the way there is rough blasting powder. You can also craft some dynamite, but this can take you all the way there. And this is where, there's a little bit of a difference, because rough stone is used for rough blasting powder, but it's also used for the rough grinding stones. Now, it does take 2 rough grinding stones to make one, rough stones to make one of these, but that's not the case for this one, right? It only takes 1. So they have different values, they have some different sell rates. I'll try both. Right now, rough blasting powder is actually about 29 gold, or silver, and it looks to be probably around 10 to 15. It actually seems pretty high right now. The regional historical price, as you can see, is about 8 silver. The regional sale average is 5 silver. So that's around the price of a rough stone. Now, when it comes to the rough grinding stones, they're worth a little bit more. But when we are thinking about these two in particular, they take a while to craft. They take just as long as making a copper bar. So whether or not we're going to do too many of these remains to be seen. But rough blasting powder, we need to make that anyway to be able to get to the copper bolts. Now, when we are going through these, we have to think about the fact that it takes time, right? So if the actual value we get out of something, like a handful of copper bolts, if you look at the actual copper bars here, they're worth about 5 gold right now, and a handful of copper bars or copper bolts are about 6 gold. And the region average daily sold is what, 4-5 times higher on copper bars. So the speed at which these will sell is a lot higher. So we have to take that into consideration, because I didn't time this out perfectly, but I actually think it's worth our time to just continue farming, posting, like going back to the city, posting this on the auction house, and then straight up just sending it. I think the only times where it might be worth it for us to do like these crafts is if I have some AFK time where I need to do something else, and then we can just get a little bit more value out of me standing around crafting something instead of being locked out. Generally, if I can actually play the game, I think it'll be worth our time, like worth more time to just straight up farm copper ore. Maybe not even turning it into copper bars, because that also takes time. So we'll see what we do with that. I'll kind of take some, I'll time it next time I have a big crafting portion, and then we'll go over that. As for the alabaster pigments, based on the prices for these different kinds of herbs, I don't think it's worth it to turn silverleaf and peace bloom into alabaster pigments, because you don't really gain anything. It kind of stays around the price that it has, right? So we don't really make a whole bunch of gold out of turning it into alabaster pigments. Maybe a little bit, maybe half a silver or something per craft, or maybe 1 gold. I meant 50 silver, half a gold. But the difference is really, really small, so I don't actually think this is worth it to make, not with the current prices anyway. One thing is that Earthroot has a lower region average daily sold compared to Silverleaf and Peacebloom, so it might be worth it to change, or well, swap Earthroot into alabaster pigments, if we can't sell it, that is. But I have never had any issues with selling Earthroot, so again, we might also just skip around that. Now, besides that, I mean, we don't really have, we didn't really get to craft much of anything else. We did go into tailoring a little bit, which means we can get a little more value out of something like linen cloth. I think if we end up farming like a lot of mobs to get a lot of potential greens and some more of those drops, I might actually swap out either herbalism or mining to be able to get that, because then we can craft some more things in tailoring. But it's not anything that we can see any huge value in. Where we really have to make a bunch of gold is getting lucky on some of the transmog pieces that we can pick up from the rares and random mobs. Other than that, we have to be consistent in the way that we make gold. That is pretty much the way that we can reach our goal. That's, I want to say, probably the only way, because relying on transmog sales, especially some that are pretty low on your sale rates, it's not what you want to do, right? So our most consistent farm that we have an opportunity to do is mining and herbalism. I don't think skinning is worth it next to herbalism and mining, just because you can do both at the same time. If we end up doing something slightly different, it'll be a combo with tailoring and maybe skinning. We'll find a spot where we can both skin and also kill humanoids to be able to get what we want. But generally, I think herbalism and mining is what we're gonna have to do. Now, let's take a little bit of a look at what we have now posted on the auction house. We have about 73,594 gold. So if this all were to sell, we'd actually be at around 75k, which is awesome, right? But we don't have that value just yet. We also do have a little bit in our mailbox. We have 1,545 gold. This is stuff that I've randomly posted over the last couple of days, as you can see, which is awesome. You can also see some of the vendor materials that we actually bought earlier have already sold a little bit. So I might refill those every time I visit the city. We're going to go ahead and loot this. And that's going to put us at 2,794 gold. So still quite low, but we also have just started our primetime farming operations. So this is when the gold is actually going to start rolling in. So the next plan, which is going to be, unfortunately, on the next episode, is that I will be farming as much as I possibly can in the usual route that I do, and then we'll see what makes it. One thing that I will say is that if we compare this to something like Elwyn, we don't have many pickpocketing opportunities. A lot of the transmog from the rares they're not really that crazy. And some of the more exciting things, at least on the Horde side in Kalimdor, is something that we'll see in Northern Barrens, Ashenvale, or Ashara. So it is kind of closed a little bit for what we can do. So depending on how it goes and how everything turns out, there is a slight opportunity that Ragefire Chasm is something that we open up for, just to make it a little bit more reasonable. But for now, we're still going to keep it closed, but if it turns out to be really bleak and really, really unlucky, there's a chance that we'll figure out how to open Ragefire Chasm. But for now, that is where we're at. We can check out the slash played. We are currently at 10 hours and 18 minutes. So if you were to look at our current gold, we have 2,794 gold, which means that our gold per hour currently is absolutely atrocious, okay? There's nothing that could get around the fact that that is absolutely atrocious, but that has nothing to do with it. A lot of the time that we've been spending recently has been leveling, number one, but the other one we've been doing a lot of work on is actually just collecting. I haven't been selling a bunch of my stuff, which is what we're going to start doing now. And you can see we have a bunch of pretty valuable stuff, so we're going to hope that a lot of this transmog sells, and then we'll get to working on more and more materials. But again, we'll see how it goes, and if we really need it, we might open up for Ragefire Chasm. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode 2 of a WoW token challenge. The plan is, whenever we do finish up Durotar, we will be going into Northern Barrens, Ashenvale, or Ashara. I'll probably do some sort of a randomizer to figure out which zone we're going into, but that is the current plan. But again, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.